So this is what day is today? Today is the 28th, my goodness, of July. This is the CICD UX meeting. We have a couple of FYIs in the agenda, so please have a look. Some time off and updates in process. And I want to start with the good news. So Katie McCoy signed a contract with GitLab and she's going to join as product designer for package in September. So super excited. Another girl in our team. That's super fun. And she's based in New Zealand. So we're going to have, well, not yet. Yes, express yourself.
Yes.
Why is that such a good thing, Nadia? Tell us.
Well, because we're in similar time zones, and I will eventually be spending probably more time in Southeast Asia. So that's great. It's just easier collaboration for me.
So that means we're going to have to figure out what to do also with Gina and all with the team meetings. And we had a discussion, I think, 2 weeks ago, and then see how we can apply that to, keep the conversation moving async, but still give them the sense of, the teamwork. So the start date is September, the 6th of September. So there's some time to plan the transition, onboarding, etc. So I'll be reaching out to you later on with more details about that. Also, a couple of announcements from me. UX Showcase, we have another one in August for CICD. So I hosted the one that you presented, I think 2 weeks ago. So second week of August, we have one for CICD. So this time I added Daniel and Gina. If you want to prepare something async, really up to you, you don't have to. So I'm gonna do like what I did last time, try to see if we can get a designer from a different product area in Americas or here in Europe to present. So no pressure on you, but if you want to participate, just let me know or add yourself there and ping me.
Okay.
And what else? GitLab commit. It's now in August, the first week of August. If you haven't subscribed yet, signed up, please do so. So I'm gonna link here the URL. And my last announcement, I think I reviewed this with the both of you, but let me vocalize that. 360 reviews, right? So the survey launches next week on Monday. I think I mentioned to you in our one-on-ones to pick 3 to 5 people to provide feedback, but the handbook says only 3 people. So select 3 peers that you'd like feedback from, and I'll be able to adjust that on Culture Amp. Set a time in your calendar for this. And as Christy announced yesterday, I'm not sure if you've seen it, we're also going to be discussing the results of this 360 feedback as a mid-year performance checking. So it's not the formal process, but we're going to talk about performance and how that can influence your the yearly performance review. And here the link to the video, the YouTube video with a walkthrough from Rose explaining how the process works. So I'm going to pause now to see if you have any questions there or anything that I can clarify on the 360 feedback process.
I haven't watched the video yet, so maybe it answers my question, but I was wondering if there's guidelines on like, what do you need to have a certain mix of people that you're asking feedback from? Like it should be like one of the product designers, maybe your product manager, and I don't know, are we supposed to, or are we allowed to include you, for example, as our manager, or would you say we should more focus on our product teams?
So you're going to have to nominate myself. This is in the handbook, by the way. Manager, okay. You don't have any direct reports, and a selection of 3 peers. So me and 3 other folks. Since design in general, we work in a very heavily cross-functional teams, and we have cross-functional roles. I would say select, your PM, 1 engineer that you collaborate closely with, and for example, another product designer, because I think that represents a good mix. right? From yeah, to get a perspective from these different roles. I would say I want to say as researchers, but with our team now it's limited. But I would say, yeah, focus on the people that you interact the most with and that you think, okay, their feedback will be, important and relevant to me as part of this process. So does that clarify? Does that answer your question?
So should it be 3 people, not including you?
Exactly. So 4 total. So myself, it's gonna add include your AMP. You see in the video, the tutorial, you're gonna have to select your manager and then 3 peers. So
Okay.
3 peers, it can be PM, engineer, doesn't matter, but myself and 3. And then after you do that, I have to approve and review before you can these people get the alert or notification. So I'll talk to you. Say, okay, maybe not this person, maybe that other one. So we
Yeah,
can communicate there.
sounds good.
Any questions?
Nothing. I think I had similar questions and they are mostly answered. And I think I watched this video once. I have to watch it again. I only watched like first few minutes and I read the handbook. So I think I'm good right now.
Awesome. And there's going to be a Ask Me Anything session today. There's a doc. You should have that in the agenda, but there's a doc with a couple of async questions. If you have any outstanding questions or if you want to clarify or see what other people are asking, check that. I'm going to add the document here. Right. And next up, of course, myself again. Maybe we should mix it up a little bit so I don't start the meeting talking for the first 5 minutes. Yeah, it's the pajamas component life cycle. So Jeremy posted this, I think, last week in the UX call. So they moved it up, right, in pajamas, and the contribute content also changed. And this is to help discoverability and also better grouping of the process. There are a couple of changes also. Some parts of the process were deprecated. So please become familiar with that. That's important not only if you are working or building new components, but if you are, for example, adding new details to the guidelines or working or updating Figma components. So have a read, and next week we can we can touch base on doing a one-on-ones if you have any questions. And I think you have 2 comments here. Want to voice those?
Yeah, I do have. So first of all, I did take a note of it and I found it very useful, like the changes that we have made to the lifecycle and the contribution rules. Secondly, there are a couple of people who have been reaching out who are not a part of GitLab. Maybe as a part of their educational curriculum, they're looking at places where they can make a contribution to. They're designers, but they want to make an open source contribution. And I've been getting requests around like how they can make a contribution to GitLab, and what are the issues they should be looking at. I've mostly been sharing this component lifecycle link and the link to the pajamas project. But is it something that we are going to maybe move our focus to in time to come? Or like, do you think that looking at the stage that the product is in, that as a company, GitLab, we are at, this is something that would come much later?
Let me see if I understand correctly. You were asking about the community contributions and pajamas?
Right.
Yeah.
To make it more friendly for the community.
Yeah. I heard some conversations in the past about this. I think the goal, right, is to it's open source as everything we do, and
Right.
we do have a couple of people that they contribute regularly. And I've seen in the past when I participated, for example, of hackathons, and I saw community contributions coming specifically to pajamas from other designers or front enders, etc. I do think this is it's a criteria, but I'm not sure entirely sure if it's a focus today or if that will be, for example, next quarter or next year. I think in general, yes, it's part of the idea, but not that the foundations team is working actively on it. I'll say check it out with them, ping them in Slack and ask about that. It might be in their roadmap, and they might have a plan also, for example, for us. But this updates to the component lifecycle. Of course, it's to help us, help designers contribute not only more actively, but easily to pajamas. That was part of the feedback, right, that was collected with that survey. And yeah, also aims at the making this easier for the community. So I hope that answers your question without answering your question.
It did. So I will definitely get in touch with the foundations team to get more answers.
Yeah. Awesome. Um, I'll jump to Gina's point. So async. So not in this call. So Gina created this short video, the reflection on her onboarding process so far. And I see that we all left our comments here, but I want to say that I was really impressed that Gina, Gina is really a pro, and she was yeah, so comfortable and talking so easily about her process so clearly in a very short video. So Gina, if you're watching this later, it was awesome. Really proud of you already demonstrating this the async values, right, and capabilities. And I'm really excited to see how to gonna get started with the UX scorecard process. So update on that, Vitika. So Gina will participate of that KR for the UX scorecard. We're gonna do that differently. So we're gonna get her to do the whole scorecard, and then you will just help as if you were doing the buddy process. So I'm really excited to see how Gina will evolve, and we'll form collaborating with the other stakeholders, etc. So that was awesome. And then if you want to voice your comments here, also feel free. Otherwise, we can jump to the next item.
Nadia, do you want to? I can.
Oh, sorry, I haven't realized that my comment was next. Yeah, I really liked the video, and I really liked how concise and clear it was. And I even got a bit jealous, like I can never learn to talk like that, but I want to. So, Gina, if you're listening to the recording and you have any tips for like make a recording where you don't say filler words and don't mumble and ramble on, that tends to happen to me. Please share some tips, because I thought it was really great and really easy to follow.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that thought. Even I felt that the whole video was very to the point and full of substance. So it was like she shared some pretty great insights without mumbling and without fillers, of course.
Native speakers.
Maybe that's the secret.
Exactly. I was actually thinking, like, did she write a script or something? I always write a script, otherwise I just go crazy, go everywhere. But I marked her here in the doc, so she sees her questions and then answers asynchronously. And then next topic, stage group updates. Daniel's not here today, not present. So Nadia, you're up next.
Yeah, so just wanted to share a little bit about the next steps for the CICD template experience vision. So you've probably seen either the walkthrough or the mockups or the epic that I shared around the North Star vision for GitLab CICD templates. If you want to read more about the problems that we've uncovered and the research behind it and things like that, you can just check out the parent epic for that issue that I've linked. But basically now that we've created this vision, we want to start validating it, because even though it's based on a lot of insights, the actual solutions that we're proposing, we don't have a very high confidence about many parts of it. So we want to validate it with customers over the next milestone or so, maybe milestone and a half. And we'll probably talk to a mix of customers and internal and external users. I'm going to create an issue for solution validation this week, and we will start strategizing how to go about it. So we want to keep it as lean as possible, but at the same time, we want to achieve like two kind of different goals. We want to validate the overall direction, the overall vision, but also get a sense for what should be our top priority. What are the things that we can prioritize as an MVC to create the most impact and provide the most value? Because yesterday, Dov and I were talking about our team being a bit short on resources. So currently one of our front engineers is on parental leave, and we just don't have enough people to be building this vision, because we also need to stay within the air budgets and take care of bugs and things like that. So for example, this milestone, I think we have like only a handful of issues where we're addressing usability problems, and the rest are bugs and some carryovers from previous milestones. So basically, we're moving quite slowly, and we feel like it's really important for us to be very strategic about the things that we will be working on, because we want to still move the needle on GMAO for the pipeline authoring. So we'll see how that goes. I will keep you posted on like what ideas we have. At this point, I don't know how we will be structuring this study to kind of get our answers, but first we will start by figuring out exactly what kind of questions we have and what information we need to get, and we will go from there.
Yeah. That's super important. Thanks for the overview, Nadia. That's super important, having, like what you say, a high level of confidence, right, on the solutions, but also, yeah, identifying what the MVC. And my comment here is also, think about not only the boring solution, the MVC, but how you're going to incrementally build on top of these boring solutions. We had a similar challenge in the now defunct release management team with the release page, right? We did the research and it was like, okay, we have to redesign everything. We don't have the resources. How do we build this incrementally? So I linked here the epic, it's an epic that breaks down how we're going to make it viable. So from going API first, that's what happened to us, going API first to giving users the ability to edit, but not, for example, create things in the UI and the reasoning behind it. So you find in these issues how kind of we build the blocks to the point that it was viable, not the feature, not a category in itself, but the ability to create and manage its releases, right, was viable. So to share with you here this example. So you also consider that in your next steps.
Yeah, what is really helpful for us is that we already have implementation proposals in place that are quite fleshed out. So that gives us an idea for like what things are possible. So I think once we get some insights from customers, it will be easier to see the path. Because at this point, we do see some potential MVC paths. We're just not sure which one we would take. And then once we see what path we need to take, we will be fleshing out the designs further, just in a smaller scoped issue, and then probably doing some lightweight solution validation on the details of the experience as well. So the first step is just to get like a general idea for what direction we should move in.
That's awesome. Keep us posted.
And the next thing, the next thing is that I started documenting new jobs to be done around pipeline optimization. They're based on the research insights that came out of solution validation around the pipeline graph, specifically the job dependencies view. We learned that the job dependencies view is used very heavily by people who optimize pipelines. And yeah, at GitLab, we have people who are dedicated specifically to optimizing pipelines all day. So it was very interesting to talk to them and learn about the use case and what goals they're trying to achieve and what kind of information they're looking for. So yeah, feel free to comment. I see, Vitika, that you already made some comments there. Feel free to voice your comment here.
I've also added the link for the a very recent MR that I created after my scorecard exercise, where Valerie has also put some comments. So that was a learning as well for me to understand like what kind of impact could the jobs to be done have on your scorecard exercise. And so I'm more vigilant now. I would also need your help once we are done with your MR to kind of rephrase the jobs to be done that we have for pipeline execution.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like also with using the word pipelines, on the one hand, it's specific to GitLab, but it's not really only specific to GitLab. There are many other, it's also just a concept of like your, you know, it's not just related to GitLab product offering. Pipeline is used interchangeably with the workflow for when other organizations use other tools. So I'm not sure it's like so black and white here with the word pipeline. And also using the word workflow, for example, GitHub uses workflows to call their workflows.
So how I am, the suggestions that are put in your MR right now. So for example, this one, the one that says when viewing a running pipeline. So I kind of change that to in the automation process. So because through pipelines, what we are trying to do is we are trying to automate tasks. So like I've used the most simple words that I could come up with for to substitute all those terminologies which might be thought of as unique to the tool, if not the product GitLab. Like all similar tools use similar words. So yeah, have a look at that and let me know if the suggestions look good. Then I'll get inspired by the suggestions.
Yeah, thanks so much for going ahead and making those suggestions. I think automation process sounds pretty good. And on the one hand, it sounds a bit weird, but on the other hand, when I read the whole job to be done, I do see the benefit of having something that's at a higher level. Suddenly you take a step back of something that is, it's not like pipeline is not necessarily product specific maybe, but it's solution specific still. So taking a step above that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move to the next point, which is by me. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was a recent issue that I worked on. This had been there since a very long time, and it's a very upvoted issue. It talks about substituting the ID with IID, which is like the ID that's the unique ID that's more specific to the project rather than like the overall thing on the SaaS platform. So that ID would definitely be shorter than what we see as pipeline ID right now on GitLab. Now it has many uses, like some users feel that it's very critical to their workflow because, for example, there's a use case where the file version field, which can only take up to 16-bit integers. And in most cases, ID has exceeded, like the pipeline ID has exceeded 16-bit. And so it kind of breaks their versioning schema. And that's where IID would really be helpful. But today we don't show IID on the UI. I mean, at some point we used to, but I'm not very sure like what was the feedback cycle like for that, why that was removed exactly. But there's definitely a need to bring it back. But bringing it back would also have brought back the previous problem that we were facing, which is having a very cluttered, like overly populated pipeline index page with all kinds of information. So we had to make sure that there's a way to surface the IID on the pipeline index page. Then we also have to keep in mind that there are still users who heavily use the ID in their day-to-day workflows. So we shouldn't be excluding those to include the bunch that finds the other ID useful. And those IIDs, once they're surfaced, they also had to be clickable. So given these many constraints, I came up with like a solution, and I took inspiration from how other pages use the filter bar. So I figured out that we do not use checkboxes or switches beyond like below the filter bar to add additional filtering criterias. So I tried accommodating a new drop down in the same space. And yeah, this is the solution that we kind of have settled for. But this is also interesting because it touches upon the discussion that Nadia, you and I have been having recently about like what identifiers we should be servicing to users. So that conversation was more on the side of surfacing more human readable ones, but we also have to evaluate that out of those many IDs and many numbers that we show on these pages, which ones should take precedence, which ones should be clickable and not.
Liana, do you want to jump in with your comment?
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the at the prototype. What did it say? Yeah, it's just FYI. I think Daniel's also looking at the UI improvements and usability. Improvements to the environments page, and he might benefit from this discussion, Vitika, of what's important and why, and how do we display it. And then, of course, with guidance from the foundations. The foundations folks, these table, the tabular elements, they're really a headache. So I'm glad that you're having these discussions. And so I have a side question here, Nadia, sorry for jumping into it. Vitika, when you showed when you decided to show these elements in the drop down, the pipeline ID, was there already like a way in the product today to kind of hide and show elements in the UI or in the list that you could replicate, or is this like a known pattern?
So we started showing the IID at some point when this issue was created. So this issue was created in reaction to that. And it's weird because at like a month back, I proposed to close this issue because the description that we had upon this was very contradicting to the requirement, which is the real requirement. The issue initially said that we have all these different IDs on the pipeline index page, and there's hardly any use for the ID. So why are we also showing the IID? It all looks so confusing. So I went back to check, like, how are we doing it today? So I saw we don't show the IID anymore. I mean, there is a way for us to fetch it, but we are not surfacing that in the UI anymore. I thought maybe that's a solution to this problem. So I proposed closing it, but then you would see that many comments followed after my comment, and users came back to reiterate what the real problem is. And that's when Jackie and I went ahead and changed the whole description. So there is no like I did not replicate any existing way of doing it. I had to introduce a new pattern to make it appear. And yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Go ahead, Nadia.
I have a couple of questions and comments. So, do you have a sense for what is the percentage of the users that use IIDs versus IDs?
Not really. So Jackie and I also thought of getting in touch with the growth team to maybe conduct an experiment. But in the meanwhile, whatever solution we would have rolled, we wanted that to have like the least impact on both the sides of the user, like people who want to use the ID, people who want to use the ID. So we feel that with this solution, we would not be really hurting either sides. And at the same time, we can also continue on our effort to understand like how many users actually prefer to use which ID.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned that the reason why some of those users wanted to use IID is because using the regular ID would break their system because it would get too long. So that makes me thinking that it's not like a per user problem, but it's per project problem, or maybe even per organization, because based on their workflows, their ID gets long and it breaks their system. So that got me thinking that maybe it should be a setting at a project level, perhaps like CICD setting, rather than having a toggle in the UI, because it seems like someone would make a choice to do this not like on a daily basis and change their mind, but it's more like a choice that the project owner makes, that, hey, we use IID for our pipelines, so let's show it in the UI.
So the usage of the pipeline ID is not problematic for any native feature that we have in GitLab itself. It becomes a problem if you go to the issue, the problem to solve, it says that users want to embed the build number in Windows resource file, and that's where we are hitting this problem.
So do you think, is there a use case in an organization where someone will want to use ID, but some other developer will want to use IID to identify their pipelines?
I couldn't say that. I mean, I would say yes, but not with a lot of confidence. I would get a better confidence once we start tracking this information. And so far, there was no way, and we also did not realize the requirement to track it. So we don't have any data at hand.
Yeah, because I feel like if there's no need to allow different users to change the setting, like let's say you're just viewing the pipelines page and you're like, hey, let me check out the IID. So you use the toggle. It feels more like something you would set and forget. Like, I want to use IID, so let me select the setting in CICD settings, and then it's applied by default. But I don't really know like the workflows. It's just kind of my hunch based on the use case, just because it seems like it's not per user.
That's a useful like suggestion, because I mean, this is also the first time I'm coming across this use case, so I also don't have a very in-depth knowledge about it. But yeah, your point about whether or not this is a user-specific requirement or project-specific requirement, that definitely that is definitely what we should be kind of evaluating, because if like if a team is working in a certain way, then that definitely makes it a project level requirement, right? And it shouldn't be a requirement for every person who's working on the project to go and make this change in the toggle. Rather, as you said, it should be set and forget option for them, like the default that we should be providing.
Yeah. Also, another reason that I can think of to have it this way is for compliance reasons. So if an organization is if a large organization wants to have like a coherent track record of different pipelines, they would want to have one single way of identifying that pipeline. So when when they're being audited, they don't have like someone uses IDs, someone uses IIDs, and now it can be confusing. So like having a standard practice that is applied either at a project level, or I can see someone might even want to set it at group level. So this is also something to consider. Maybe you could also check with the compliance team to see if they have any insights around this, because they have a better understanding of like different standards that organizations might want to enforce. And sometimes they have weird things like that. Like you need to have some very specific ways to identify different events.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe the first step towards this should be setting up a tracking to understand like how many users are on both the sides of, and the next item should be understanding if this is a team level behavior or a user level behavior.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. They're very useful.
Sure.
I love when we get productive in these calls.
Design review.
Awesome. Vitka, do you want to quickly go over the permissions in for CI?
Yeah, sure. So I I mean, individually, I went across the initial structure for documenting this, the permissions against the operations with both of you individually. But I put a snapshot of that in a comment that in the latest comment in the epic that I've linked. So that's how it used to look like. But in the conversation that I had with Fabio yesterday, there were many things which were uncovered that it was also very interesting to learn about how we like set policies and permissions on GitLab. So we use something that we call declarative policies. And generally with declarative policies, it's very easy to manage. But the only bumpy part with that experience is that your permission model is kind of scattered across so many different files. Now, we figured that the ideal way of doing this mapping is going to be like pick an operation, create a whole matrix of conditions and roles, and see like which combination of roles and preconditions would allow users to perform an action. But that would be a very difficult and very tedious work to do. I mean, imagine one spreadsheet for every single operation. So that's definitely not something that we should take up doing in a manual way. So we had this discussion to understand like how much value we would provide if we are going to map it, and how are we going to kind of decipher the learnings out of it. So Fabio suggested one really good point, that instead of like just mapping for the sake of it, we should try to understand like how the chain and the flow of like how does the precondition cascades down to other operations. So for example, if you want to maybe delete a build, then for that, the precondition is you should be able to have, you should have the permission to maybe like some editing rights on the project. For that, you need some preconditions to do something at the group level. And so it's kind of, it goes in that way. So we thought if we document in like the cascading levels of these permissions, we would be able to establish a baseline for every operation, like what's the baseline permission that you need for each operation. And at the same time, for example, if we need to bring in a new operation and fit it in a hierarchy, we'll get an idea about what are the preconditions that should come checked for this operation. So that way our future decisions will be so much more easier, especially for UX designers to make a case of what should and should not be allowed. It would be like we would be able to make much more rational decisions around things.
Now I'm going to open with my sidebar here. I love that there is a VHS emoji. I didn't know that. But also, I'm really glad, Vitika, that you're having the discussions on how to set up this process and how and why you're documenting this before jumping into the mapping, because I think that was my gut feeling. It's like, okay, this is too complicated. It looks like something it's gonna take up not only a lot of time, but a lot of effort. So I would say, since you already had the discussions with Fabio on looking at the preconditions, try a pilot, rather than I'm going to do everything for CI or for whatever. Just do a pilot and see how that looks in a very small scope, and then how you can progress. How do you progress actually with that?
Right.
So that you have an idea of what the process will look like for other people to replicate that and help you out. Yeah.
Right. So I think Nadia and I discussed yesterday that we would be running a pilot with the pipeline index page just to begin with. And I also had a conversation with Jackie just to state that we shouldn't be time boxing this exercise, because it's possible that this might take a lot of time, but at the same time, this is not blocking any of our ongoing efforts. So like we can take this as something that could run on the side, take the time it needs, but it should be thorough, and it should be like good enough that at some point we shouldn't feel that we took a very shallow approach with the whole mapping effort.
Yeah, the stretch that we talked about.
Yeah, I think the current process sounds good. And also, once we have a better idea for exactly how we're going to break it down, I think it could be useful to create issues, separate issues for each part, or like for the pilot that you mentioned, just for the pipeline index page, just so the scope is clear for what is the first kind of piece of it that needs to be addressed. So that will make it easier for everyone to see how much effort it is, because looking at the whole thing, it's big and scary, and it's difficult to understand like where you want to get started. And another thing, I think once we have the pilot, it would be really good to document the process so others can also follow it. So it doesn't have to be something that we're doing alone, even on a CICD team, but it should be like a process that other can replicate and extend it and document it in a way that is like standardized.
Yeah.
Right. That's the plan. And that's why I'm trying to keep it like arrive at a process which is very easy to follow, because each time going through this whole circle, I don't think it would be worth it.
Yeah, and I think a good reference in general is what the foundations team, what they always do, that they're so very detailed with the process, right? So you get an issue assigned to you, there's like these check boxes and the steps by step that you need to do. I think that's also going to be, once you go through this, you're going to have that idea and then figure out how do you break that down so that people just follow it, with ease. And it can be, it can become a bit of a burden, I'll say, if you have to figure out everything yourself and play around with UI, etc. So we are almost at time, or maybe we are at time. So I'm going to power through the next couple of items for testing runner. So for package. So for package first, we're going to continue validating the jobs to be done for package. We have 2 jobs to be done, 2 categories, sorry. And Nadia is going to be helping us with that. So thank you, Nadia. Shout out to Nadia for helping us in Q3 until the new designer joins in September. But by the time they're onboarded, the quarter is already over. So Nadia will be working on that. And also for runner, shout out to Vitika for testing runner. Shout out to Vitika for helping us with the research and project quality summary for testing. That was awesome. And I know that you're working on next steps. So I'm going to follow up on this with you so that can also transition this out to Vitika at some point. But thanks, Vitika, again for your help. And
it was fun.
And small updates on testing merge requests, we just redesigned. So this is part of it's going to be a Q3 KR, but it's a follow-up from the Q2 KR on improvements, usability improvements to the merge request. The foundation team is investigating how to execute these improvements, as in what is the process, what needs to be changed, who does what. But just so you know, this is happening this quarter, and I'm still the DRI while Gina onboards, and then Gina would take over and possibly help with these improvements. And then for runner, also enterprise management it's still a big thing for us, but we didn't have UX capacity to focus on it in the last couple of months. So the admin view for runner, it's a very exciting problem. There's so many issues, there's so many jobs and scenarios that we have to address. And I'll be working also to transition this out to Gina and help create the design, the roadmap with PM. So similar to what Nadia discussed, like this amount of problems, how do we break this down in the MVC and build incrementally to make improvements to the admin page. Right? If you have any interest or any questions, please just check out the issues. And I know that we are at time. We have a couple of fun stuff and comments. So thank you for sharing the audiobooks recommendations. And I don't want to keep you, but if you wanna go over these items, just please speak now or forever hold your comments on fun items.
Please try Vectory and have your mind blown. It's like a 3D design tool that is very similar to Figma and very intuitive. If you've ever tried learning 3D design and ever tried like Cinema 4D or things like that, I've tried and never progressed just because of how complex and difficult it is to get started. But with Vectory, if you use Figma, you just instantly know how to use it. And it has lots of pre-built 3D textures and things like that, and live rendering. So you guys, the future is here.
Is it a free tool, Nadia? Or do you have to pay for?
It has a free tier, and so far I haven't found anything that I need from the paid plan. So you can definitely learn it and design some cool things with the free version.
Nice.
And it's in the browser as well. So.
And compared to Spline, do you have any idea how this weighs?
I haven't tried Spline.
Okay. Okay, I'll try this out. I love creating 3D items, but yeah, I'm also limited by the tools. So from me, the update is I'll again be speaking at the CC Summit, but this time around the topic is a little different. It's something that I recently took interest in. It's it's about Interledger Protocol. It's a web native payment method, which is agnostic of any subscription plans, any platforms. So let's say if you or I, we have a website and we add content to our website. So we can totally leverage the traffic that our content brings in to our platform. And we don't really have to abide by any rules and any like by the rules that's created by the very established platforms like YouTube or Medium, let's say. So we can be independent at our own conditions. So that's the proposal that, I mean, the system is already in place. I'm just trying to like look at more creative ways of implementing it. And if anybody is interested in reading books which kind of touch upon play theory, it can be in any tangent. So there's a whole series of books by MIT around playful thinking. And I have read 2 out of those, and they are very interesting, but you can like definitely make your pick depending on whatever interests you.
This is super interesting. Thanks so much for sharing.
It's awesome. Thank you, Vitika. Vitika is
Audiobooks.
always a good resource for books or anything in between. But now I have to go to you, Vitika, for audiobooks, because
Okay.
if you have, if your title is available on audiobook, put it there on the side. Then I'll
Okay.
definitely check it out.
Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Right. Then I think that's it. I'll see you next time. And if I don't see you by Thursday, I'm off, by the way. I'm off Friday. Have a lovely rest of the week, and enjoy yourself. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Bye, guys.
Bye.